So I'm very grateful for Claire to be joining me. We do a lot of streams together. Claire is, well, you might be confused if you don't know her by her appearance. She is secular, agnostic, but believes in the Quran, so hence the hijabi look, but also has a Father Christmas look. I've been doing a series for the last month about usury, how destructive it is, how Jews control us through this special mechanism. Without too much of an introduction, and we'll get Claire to talk in a second, but let's play that video that I always play for this topic. Let's go to give you an idea of how dangerous usury is.
Me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Throughout history, moneylenders have had the special ability to create money out of nothing. The concept of usury, or unfair interest on loans, has been condemned as immoral by many key figures throughout history. For example, Julius Caesar, Aristotle, Plato, Napoleon, and even a certain man with a unique mustache were all against usury. Stephen Goodson in his book explains that people who run this debt system have used their power throughout history to subvert governments, manufacture wars that produce vast profits, and topple regimes whose banking system was not under their control. Give me control of a nation's money, and I...
As I say, there's a lot of stuff that's said here that probably needs to be explained in the video. I do want to give Claire a chance to start talking. One is it pays for wars. Wars are too expensive without the help of bankers. And some people might say, for example, that usury, which is lending money on interest, doesn't mean printing fake money, but I think it starts that process of creating money from nothing or creating money out of money and things like that, this whole spiral. So Claire, thank you very much for being here. Claire is a secular Koranist. If you've never been on a show, seen any of my live streams, let's start off with, what is a secular Koranist, Claire?
It's Sharia for non-Muslims, and it is the only way to ban usury, because you can't expect, these Christians to ban usury, since they were the ones who said, on the one hand, that it shouldn't be allowed, and then they allowed it. So they are a bit confused. Was to finance, he carried on with it. So it is a kind of behavioral addiction, and maybe it's understandable in that if you had a money tree in your garden and you could just go and shake it every time you wanted stuff, you would just carry on doing it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but of course we don't have money trees, and there are consequences to this usury system. And we'll probably go into that in a minute. I should probably reiterate, maybe I'm a Muslim, and the Muslim perspective is that usury or money borrowed on interest is wrong. That's a bit unclear now in the modern day with Christians, because they've essentially watered down their faith. Some people might get upset by that. Some Catholics, I've heard a lot more Catholics watching my live streams, and they'll say we're totally against it, but not many people know that you should be against it. This is a stream to create awareness, or a set of streams to create awareness of that it's against many people's religions, but most people don't know it, and how dangerous it is and why it's against their faith. And then Jews, we talked about, I talked to a Jewish guy last time about it. It's a bit weird that they think it's a bad thing, but it's okay to do that bad thing against non-Jews, is the short version, but they won't do it amongst themselves.
Because what isn't forbidden is allowed.
Yeah.
And Gentiles are just too stupid to work out that, if it's bad for Jews, it's also... So
yeah, that's fair
and these
enough in a way.
Christians who reject Sharia want to keep themselves stupid, but then they're happy blaming Jews.
Yeah. My understanding of, I don't want to go into Judaism, maybe, But Anyway, I talked to a Jew about that last week. Let's leave that part of the topic. I'm really interested from a secular person what your perspective is, because it's a bit unusual, because it's mostly religious people who've been told this is really bad, you shouldn't do it. But secular people, non-religious people, they just think it's normal, borrowing money on interest. I think maybe your connection's not so great today, Claire. I mean, I think your sound was going off and now your picture's disappearing.
Yes,
But I'll
I
ask.
was
Oh yeah,
wondering
go on.
if
Yeah.
I should use my phone again, because previously I was using my phone, but on this occasion, um, I think it just uses up too much um, memory or whatever. Can you
Something.
hear me
Yeah.
now?
I mean, I can hear you. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's do one question. The first question is usually lending money on interest bad, and let's see what happens if the connection's really bad. You switch to your phone.
Right. It's bad because of all the reasons we've said. It's borrowing on the never, never. People don't borrow or lend responsibly. You fall victim to loan sharks. You make the next generation pay in higher taxes and higher inflation. And you think you can inflate your way out of your debt, which explains hyperinflation in the 1930s in Germany, when the Germans were persuaded that perhaps only a dictator would be able to solve their problems
Yeah, and we have
after the Wall Street
hyperinflation now.
crash.
We
Hmm?
have extreme inflation. You might not call it hyperinflation. We're not paying millions of pounds for bread yet, but we're on our way there. So we've done many streams on this before, so that's why we're just touching on some of the bad things. We've talked about many of the bad things in previous streams about usury and how dangerous it is. Okay, and the connection's gone, so I think it's time for her to connect on the phone. I'll just message her. Connecting on the phone, which she obviously will be doing anyway. Okay, cool. So, of course, do make comments in the live chat or the non-live chat afterwards, and I'll try to respond to that as well. But let's continue. Let's talk. Let me answer some of the dangers that might not have been clarified while Claire is just trying to rejoin. First of all, the Quran is very clear. It's not just like an interpretation of Muslims. Muslims generally are very clear in all over the world. This is a bad thing. And the Quran says, those who devour interest do not rise except as rises one whom Satan has smitten with insanity. So the idea is that it creates not just satanic ideas or ways of thinking, but it's like an addiction. So once you borrow money, you want to borrow more, and you get trapped in it. This cycle of needing to borrow more. So that's basically what countries are suffering from. They keep borrowing, then they have to pay more back, and then have to borrow more to pay more back, and you don't really rise. They do rise in some ways. You can say European countries are rising, but they're rising in a satanic way, which is they're basically needing to produce more and then therefore steal from all their neighbors. I was just kind of explaining some of the dangers of interest from the Islamic perspective, from the Quran, where it says it creates a satanic mindset, and trying to explain why it's in what ways it's satanic mindset. But anyway,
These Islamophobes don't care. They're going
okay,
to
fair
say,
enough.
Muslims live in shithole countries because they can't practice usury. That's what they're going to say, right?
Yeah, and then what are we going to say? What was that thing we were chatting about earlier on? What was it called? The wolf? What were we messaging
Wolfowitz
each?
doctrine.
Yes. And that kind of explains what's really going on, which is America says no other country should be able to compete against them. We're going to make sure they stay third world countries if we can. And so that's kind of what's happening. And all Muslim countries are not necessarily third world countries anyway. I don't know how Jordan is defined, but it's doing really well. It's a really nice place to live. So, yeah, which is a Muslim country. Yeah. Okay, so shall we carry on with the questions?
Go on.
So one question was, is usury bad? We talked about that. Deadly for economies, for the world, for causing wars, etc. Next one is, it's normally religious people who are against usury. How comes you, a non-religious person, are against it?
Well, because having done A-level economics, I do understand a little about the economy and how any graduate in economics won't be able to talk about the banning of usury because it's kind of forbidden or heresy. So if you say, if you ask any economist how the world might be without usury, they wouldn't be able to tell you because they haven't learned anything about that. But I
They've
think you see the
told,
consequences of it.
yeah. So there was a documentary many years ago, 20, maybe 10 years, I don't know, how they implant how economic, I don't know, string pullers. I can't remember what category of people, but they go to places like LSE, London School of Economics, and other top places, and they make sure economics is taught in a certain way, and that includes that usury is fine as normal and all that kind of stuff. So, if you are a graduate, you don't really think for yourself; you just get told something, and to get your degree, you have to swallow the stupid beliefs about how the economy works. You're not supposed to question it, otherwise you don't get your degree. And what else do you do other than just believe what your professors tell you? So yeah, I totally agree that how can you say universities are compromised academically.
Or centers for political indoctrination.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, cool. So you studied a little bit. You looked at the facts and you realized how dangerous usury is as a secular person. Next question is: do Jews control us with usury?
I really don't think so because since the time of John Calvin, which was the 1600s, um, Europeans have been practicing usury because it was John Calvin who said usury is okay. While Martin Luther, who was the one who started the Reformation um, on the continent, he said, it's absolutely not allowed. But then John Calvin went to Switzerland and he told the Swiss bankers that a little bit of usury is all right as long as the interest rates are low. And they loved him because of that. So it's been going on for a long time. But I guess, you know, the way anti-Semites think and behave, it's like that they're happy blaming Jews. I mean, anything bad that government does, they blame the Jews rather than their own, stupid religion, because they're just happy, to blame others for their own stupid religion.
Yeah, I do think you should. I'm all about taking responsibility, but to be fairer, isn't it Jews that mostly control the banks, and maybe they um, bribed in some ways or convinced some people they could make some money if they participate in their grand scheme of Jewish scheme of lending money and whatever. It's just using Christians, using non-Jews to participate in making Jews richer. How do you feel about that way of thinking about
Well,
it?
I mean, we know, I mean, anti-Semites say, oh, these Jews have been kicked out of all these countries. But basically, what these Gentiles would do is invite Jews to come into their country and lend the government money. And when the government gets tired of paying the interest, kick them out. I mean, that's a reason. But the Jews are also supposed to declare Jubilee after I don't know how many years, and then when they're supposed to free their slaves and forgive all debts, and they don't do that. So they broke their own rules. I guess it doesn't matter whether you're Jew or Gentile. I mean, if your government taps you on the shoulder and says we'd like you to lend us some money through your, you know, knowledge of usury, you're not going to say no to them. You've got a government contract, so why would you say no? Um, and the usual stories of Jews financing both sides of the war, but well, they would, wouldn't they? Because you, um, I mean, I guess if it's an international bank like the Rothschilds banking,
Mm.
then there'd be a branch in Germany, a branch in Britain, and but actually it's under the same ownership. Um, so I suppose you could say that, but war finance is very important. If you need to do it properly, or you will get inflation, and then you'll get your own people hating on you and overthrowing you, because imperial wars are harder for the um, person expected to fight and die in them to understand. It's like, well, why are we here? Why were we sent to this godforsaken place to die for? What reason was it again? Kind of thing.
Mm.
So the thinking and preparation for fighting an imperial war is rather different than fighting a defensive war. And but then this is what the Christian characteristic is. I mean, they are the ones who acquired three global empires. Um,
Mm.
but in the meantime, they pretend that Muslims are the really scary people.
Sure. I'm trying to. Okay. Yeah. So you're saying Jews aren't to blame. If somebody asks them for money so that the Jews can make more money, the Jews will just give the money. Doesn't matter if Hitler's asking for it or England or whatever, Britain. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. A lot of people won't agree with that. They won't think it's good to fund Hitler's regime, let's say, especially since Hitler killed so many Jews. But I suppose that's another discussion. And then you said something about the Muslims, and we're not the enemy, you're saying, basically. Jews and Muslims are
Well,
not the enemy.
terrorism is a poor man's war, isn't it?
Interesting. Terrorism is a poor man's war because you're poor relative to the government that you're trying to terrorize. So yeah, I guess what you mean. Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, if you're an imperial nation, you'll be, invading lots of countries, and the
Mm.
people, the countries you've invaded won't like you for it, and
Hmm.
tend to commit, acts of terrorism to tell you to, go back to where you came from.
Sure.
So, and
Okay.
they'd be called terrorists.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
but even the Christians have this principle of the just war. So with the implication that not all wars are just, and then if there are just wars, are there just acts of terrorism? Because after all, when you think about it, Nelson Mandela was in prison for terrorism, and then he became a world statesman. So I
Mm.
guess he was forgiven, and um,
Yeah. I can't remember what terrorist attack Nelson Mandela indulged in, but yeah, they must have
sabotage, I think.
realized. Was it sabotage? Okay, he
Hmm.
didn't kill anybody or something? Probably not.
I don't think so. He blew up
Yeah.
some train tracks or something.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So people understood that. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So we do Jews control us with usury. Sure, I would say in a way interpreting what you said is sort of yeah, they have some control, but it's self-inflicted and it's their choice. You didn't have to, and um, is that fair enough? Like it's
Well, I keep
self-inflicted.
I keep telling the people that you've been streaming with, Catholics like Nathaniel,
Hmm.
how are you going to ban usury without Sharia?
Hmm.
I mean, you seem to
Sure,
think,
that's
well,
the next
we'll
question.
just, tell people not to borrow and whatever. Of course, they're not going to, be able to stop themselves. With credit card companies offering them, to give them credit cards, etc. So, I mean, you do have to ban it,
Wrong
but
question.
maybe you don't want to go against, be considered heretics by proposing to ban usury because it's a sacred cow of the West, isn't it? They become very protective of their right to practice usury.
Yeah, in the West, we're over concerned with just having the right to do whatever without being interested in the consequences. But let's build up to that question about like how do we get rid of usury, because that's going to be the next question. But part of how do you get rid of usury was like, what's the alternative to usury? Like, how can businesses get money without usury? Don't they need to borrow money? Some of our trollers or haters, like Elliot, say, well, there's no way. How does a business get money without usury? Borrowing money on interest.
Well, you can charge people a flat rate fee. I mean, you don't have to, allow compound interest. You can say, for example, every year, I don't return the £100 that you lent me. I pay you £10. And when 1 year I manage to pay you back all £100, the principal, back to you, then the debt is cancelled. It doesn't
But
have to
that's a
compound.
slippery slope, isn't it? That's basically interest, but just
I mean, do you
not a
really expect people
percentage.
to lend money for free?
No, I don't. I don't believe in. So, do you know the Islamic idea is no interest, no
But it's not
lending?
interest.
It's
It's just, a fee based on the amount of money lent. It's not
okay.
interest.
I think the basic problem is that you can. But the basic problem is that when you lend money and you know you're going to get your money back plus more, you might be encouraged, like banks often are, to lend money to people who can't afford to pay it back. Because what happens in that case, there's something that it's your if you don't pay it back, the bank gets something, for example your house, and they get it for cheap basically. So they're almost encouraged to lend badly. But the Islamic idea is that you invest, so the person who's giving you money will get something out of that if you can pay it back. And if you can't pay it back, then you lose. The lender loses, and they deserve to lose because they lent. Or say the lender, the investor is the proper word. The investor loses because they invested badly. Just like if you go to Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or whatever these shows when there's billionaires and they invest in things, they give money, and if it goes badly, it was their fault. You see, so there's a it's a inbuilt it's built into the system that the person should be able to pay back. But in the opposite is true when you have any sort of definite income coming back, and that's basically usury.
Do you think these issues might be a bit too complicated for your viewers, who are just probably more
No,
interested in blaming Jews and hating on Muslims?
maybe.
I mean,
Okay, let
I
me
don't
just
think that they're
ask.
interested in, musharaka and mudaraba and whatever.
Okay, but I'm just confused about one thing. You can help me, right? That you're a secular Koranist, which means I agree with the Quranic idea of doing things, the Islamic way of doing things. How comes your interest? You think a bit of usury is okay, or are you arguing that maybe the Islamic way is that it's not about investing, there is room for lending with a definite amount coming back, and that's not called usury somehow. What are you saying?
Look, if I pay you £10 for every year that I keep your £100, it's not interest, is it?
Yeah, it is, because you're
Are you
getting a
sure?
definite amount of money back. That's
No,
what I
it's a fee.
understand.
It's a fee based on the actual amount of money you lent me.
Yeah, but
I
that's
don't think
what
you're sure. So
interest
if you're
is.
not sure, we're just confusing people by arguing about it, right? I mean, they don't give a damn about these, complicated things. The morons watching just want to know if Jews are to blame.
No,
Why
but
don't we
then we
discuss
could
that?
stick to that. We could not bother talking about anything and not explaining anything. We just say, "Oh,
Oh,
it's,
okay, but the thing is,
yeah."
you don't know either, do you? Do you
It
do you
sounds
think
like
that
it just
that,
sounds
that
like
if I
interest to
if I
me.
give you a flat rate fee of £10 for the £100 you lend me every year, is it interest or not?
But the problem is, it's not going to be £10, is it? It's going to be like
No, it's
£1,000.
whatever. Okay, £1 or whatever it
No,
is
it's going
that
to be
we agree
£1,000. Let's call it a
with
thousand
each
pounds
other
or
on a loan
£10,000.
agreement. What?
Yeah. What's the difference between calculating a percentage or a flat rate if you can't pay it back? What's the point of that? What's the
Well, if you
difference?
can't pay back, then you defaulted, right?
And then
I
you
don't know
lose
why we're
something. You
talking
lose your
about this. I
house.
mean, you're not exactly an expert on it anyway. So,
This is what I understand by it. Actually, it's not even that complicated.
okay, so you're saying it's interest. If
Yes.
you lend me £100 and I pay you £10, say it doesn't have to be £10. It could be £5 or whatever we
It could
agree.
be low. It could be £10,000. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying it should be based on 10% of whatever we agreed, and it doesn't compound. That's the main thing, isn't it? It doesn't compound, because once it compounds, you'll never be able to pay it back.
Yeah, but also you might not be able to pay it back just even if it doesn't compound. That's another
Okay,
thing.
but
Yeah.
then that's because then you shouldn't have lent it to me because I was a poor, risk.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point exactly. That lenders are encouraged to lend badly because they're going to get your house anyway. So, but anyway, let's agree to disagree, and I'll try to dig into. I mean, it seems quite simple to me. Like you're saying, 10% rather than something else.
No, for every year I don't
Yeah.
pay you back the £100 you lent me, I give you £10. I mean, that's simple enough for anybody to understand. So it's not compounding, right? For every year I don't pay you back for the £100 you lent me, you get £10. It is the lending fee.
And how does that compare to the alternative banking system?
I don't know. It compounds. You're the mathematician. You understand compound interest.
Yeah, but that's kind of like it's kind of the same thing the way you're doing it. But anyway, it's just
It's not the same
because
thing.
so you never listen. What happens in the bank is you either default or you don't, and the compound interest. The whole idea of that is it's how much you earn really rather than how much you're paying, because you pay a fixed amount every month, and if you don't pay up, you lose your house or whatever it was fixed on. Yeah. But anyway, so I disagree with your understanding of it. I don't. Well, okay. Let me ask you this small question just before we move on. Are you against the idea of people investing? That means they have a shared risk when they give you money to get whatever you need. Let's say get your business running, because that's the main focus. Why are you against people investing money?
Of course not. So we're talking about joint ventures, right? So
Yes.
we think, it'll be profitable for us to go to the moon, and we need, I don't know, money for the spaceship or whatever it is we want. And then, but then other people, oh, those two, they'll never get there. We're not going to lend them any money. But there might be some who said, well, we'll lend them money if we can get security on their homes, if it's worth our while. So I've given an example of some, wildly risky venture.
Okay, so got slightly different opinions on exactly how the Islamic system works, but I think most people agree that most Muslims would agree that there's no definite return, otherwise it's called usury, and that's the whole problem with usury, that there is a definite return and lenders can take advantage of people who borrow. But okay, and so the alternative system, as far as I understand, is you invest where there's a joint risk. Okay, so therefore you put your money in a wise way, or a way that the person taking your money has a good chance of returning it. Okay. What is the next thing? What is a practical? This is the thing we both really want to talk about. I think we've already kind of touched on it, but yeah, what is a practical method to stop usury from being used?
You make these contracts illegal,
Sure.
so the court doesn't enforce it. I mean, that used to
Yeah.
be the case with. I think it still is the case with gambling contracts, because a gamble is a contract. If that horse wins, you're going to pay me whatever. But it used to be the case that it is an illegal contract. So if I pay someone to be a hitman and assassinate you, and that person takes my money and doesn't assassinate you, I can't sue him in court because it's an illegal contract.
So are you saying that if I lose a bet, I don't have to pay? Or am I misunderstanding?
Well, I think people generally pay in order to carry on gambling, because
Okay.
you won't be allowed to gamble if you don't pay your gambling debts, right? And most
Right. Yeah.
gamblers are addicted to it, so they'll find a way.
So legally, I don't have to pay my gambling debt legally in the UK.
You probably get a bad credit rating if you have some account at
Okay.
Mecca,
Okay.
or these, or whatever gambling
Sure.
websites they have.
Okay, that's interesting. So your idea to stop usury is to make it illegal. That's really important. And we've already talked about how is you can not have to use the system at all. I say investment, you say flat rate or easy to pay usury, or whatever you want to call it. Easy to pay um, to pay back the money you lend, or being lent to you. I'm just trying to think what else would people say that is going to be a problem. What would Elliot say? What does he get angry about? Trying to think about what he might say. Is it that easy just to make it illegal and make payments on money borrowed, let's say, easy to pay back?
I'm sorry,
Sounds
I didn't understand that. I think you're just you're thinking aloud, right? So you're just rambling.
No, I'm just thinking, is it that easy just to make it illegal?
In theory, of course. And once you get the political will and say, this is what we're going to do, and everybody goes, yeah, 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 let's do it, and then you're in power and in government, and then you just pass a law. But I mean, in theory, it's very easy. Obviously, in practice, we have to, get into government or persuade somebody in government to support our proposal. But but I think people just, people are just dumb, right? They just get confused, like whether it's something is sound in theory, or something, or whether something and how it's done in practice. I mean, obviously they're two different categories.
Okay,
Something in
but
theory is different to what something is in practice.
sure. What about all the money owed at the moment? There's trillions owned by governments, and they all owe each other. There's a sort of a web to make sure that everybody pays. Because if you don't pay China back, China's going to be upset. And China owes probably somebody else. They could say, if we stop paying China, because most Western countries owe China billions and trillions, what do you think is going to happen?
Of course,
I'm
there's
assuming you're going
people,
to
of
just say
course,
stop it or something.
huh?
I'm just going to assume that you're going to say forget paying China back, or what is your? Well, actually, I shouldn't assume. What are we going to do in that scenario?
Well, it's just too bad. Everybody will get noticed. Like, well, China will have certain advantages too. There will be people in China who are also indebted, so they might, be happy to default on their loans. You just have to, let the damage fall where it might. I mean, of course, people are going to be upset, right? But as long as you paid back the principal, that should be, you pay back the loan. I mean, you have to say these things, otherwise, it's just some, airy fairy. Wouldn't it be nice, and crap like that, and nobody, you know, nobody will take you seriously if you don't actually even think of how it's going to be done. Of course, it can only be done with Sharia. I mean, it's not going to be done by those Christians, or liberals, or they're not going to do it.
Okay, so you're saying it won't be bad if the interest is not being paid, because you're going to pay the principal, which is you're going to pay back what you borrowed. So what's the big deal? Is that what you're saying? Sounds fair enough, I guess. Why do these other people need billions and billions extra on top of what was borrowed? Interesting. Maybe it's not that easy to borrow or pay back billions. Like how expensive are wars? Wars are pretty big, really expensive, billions and billions. And maybe you don't have the money, and then you're going to say, what would the arrangement be? Let's say you've got $1 trillion to pay back of the actual thing you borrowed in the first place. You there's not even the interest. You owe at least a minimum $1 trillion. Why should China think it's fine that you just pay back $1 trillion after 20 years, let's say? Why would they be happy about that?
I don't expect them to be happy. It's
if
like,
people are not happy, they'll kill you.
I mean, unless you want to, come and invade us. So at some point you just say it's too bad, right? If you're going to end this bad practice, you have to end it and say how you're going to do it, and then they can, take avoidant action or whatever. But I mean, there's no point just saying, oh, we're going to, usury is a bad thing, and say it 100 million times and never talk about how it's going to be done.
Agreed, something has to be done. But what happens if somebody is too upset about them not getting their money back? China's too upset and they start throwing nuclear bombs around because they get upset. Because people can get upset in that scenario.
Well, I'm sure they won't do anything like that, but they might exert pressure doing something else. But this is a kind of jubilee for the whole world, right? Everybody can just forgive all the debts and start again. And that would be a good thing for businesses and governments and individuals to start again.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I always thought that you have to pay back whatever you agreed. A contract is a contract, but maybe it's not true. A bad contract in Islam is maybe something you don't have to pay back, I guess. But my thought was the best way around it is to circumvent it, and it's not actually that hard to circumvent it once you have other laws in place. For example, if you get rid of the law about what's it called when you get something from your parents when they die? What's that called? I'm forgetting all the basic words.
Inheritance.
Like if you cut inheritance tax, okay, or get rid of it, sorry, and then you slowly get things like the house or whatever, you don't really need to buy another house if you live with your parents and stuff like that. And you don't borrow money because you can actually get away with not borrowing money. I think there are ways of avoiding it in many ways, and then slowly make the whole usury system unnecessary.
Yeah, but you have to, give an overarching idea. Yes, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned inheritance tax because it starts at 40%, right? And it's got a very low threshold, because of the of London property prices. So it's not exactly a mansion tax because, well, it depends on how much I think it's the threshold is 250 grand or something.
Really, as low as that? That's just like a tiny flat in London now. I thought it was 500, but maybe.
Possibly. I haven't checked.
But even 500 is not much for a London house. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the whole idea is that you You sell it as a package. You sell Sharia as a package. It's £325,000.
Okay. Which is nothing in London. Yeah.
Yeah. So
2-3 bedroom. Yeah.
so that is how Muslims should be packaging um, Sharia as a as a manifesto, and they just can't do it for some reason. It's like, oh, you're not Muslim, you can't speak Arabic, you're a woman, it's like, no, you use it as a manifesto, and even get the Islamophobes to see the advantage, even the businesses, even but no, there's just no creativity, and it's like they don't want to know. They want to do it in a stupid crap way.
Who wants to do what in a stupid crap way?
Muslims seem to want to think, oh, we can't have Sharia until we are Muslim majority country. So this means that they can just, not even talk about it, right? And just go to speakers' corner and win arguments against Christo morons who can't defend the Trinity and don't even know what it's about. And it's like, oh yeah, we've done a good job on Sunday. It's like, no, but what about the other stuff that you're completely bypassing? It's because of Anjem Chowdhury. Look what they did to him. 28 whole years for posting on the internet. Because they're basically cowards and hypocrites.
No, I think you've got a good point that we shouldn't have to wait for countries to benefit from Islamic ideas until like Muslims run the country, because that might take maybe 2 generations or something. And yeah, it's better to push these ideas so you can benefit from them as soon as possible. So yeah, I agree. We should talk. We're talking about it now, and yeah, I agree. We shouldn't just be talking and just winning arguments. We should be trying to push it. So you're right. I agree. We should push it
Yeah,
harder.
and offer something to the business community, because of course there's going to be advantages about that. And as for businesses wanting money to start their businesses, you could have commercial banks who assess the risk and do this joint venture thing that Muslims support. I mean, there's actually a whole bunch of ways, financial Islamic financial instruments that could be used.
Yeah, I mean, Muslims are making banks, but I think they're doing it slowly, and they're kind of making it too close to what looks like interest. But you're right. I think more of it should be done much as possible. Like even I'm here in Jordan, and I'm trying to invest in making businesses without usury to help poorer people. So I think, I think we as Muslims should take on our responsibility as much as possible. And the benefit of that, I think, is that if you work this way without interest, you will start making more and more money. Because here's a brief idea. This is my brief idea about what I might do in Jordan. If I can see, if you have too much money in one hand, you waste it. The Saudis are a really good example. They've tried what was it? The silly things they keep trying to build. First of all, they just build like forget just the Saudis, the Emiratis, whatever. They just make stupidly big buildings. They built the Palm. All these things are failed ventures, one after the other, right? Too much money in one hand, and I might have too much money in my hand, right? Having not to, life is very cheap relatively right here. So it's better I give money to run businesses with people who are hungry to work hard with that money. They'll do it better than I would. I'll probably just keep going on holiday or something, right? And waste it. So, and that money will make more money, and then we can reinvest it and it will grow. And this is not just pipe dreams. This is something that's been demonstrated in something called the Wurgel miracle, where there's a town in Austria called Wurgel, and they basically implemented this system and they became really rich really quickly. So the idea is use your money, invest it, keep using it, don't keep it in a few hands or just lying around, because first of all, money is going to lose value because of inflation anyway, so you might as well invest it and create more money faster than it loses value. So yeah, that's the rough idea. Investing should make more money, hopefully, in the long term if you do it wisely. Cool. Okay. So that's a practical method to overcome usury. One is to implement laws to stop the whole bad thing. You say people should have a sort of amnesty, like forget paying it back, and everybody the whole world would be better for it. Actually, so I'm going to come back to that in that problem, because I just realized that you have to have an international amnesty for that to work. So it's not just like the UK has to implement Sharia, the whole world has to simultaneously implement Sharia. So I want to come back to that in a second. But and just to summarize what I was saying is, I think a safer, easier way is to just circumvent the system over time, because the whole interest-based system is a very destructive system, and you can beat it easily if you work together and help you invest in each other. So back to just that question, you're saying implement Sharia maybe just in the UK or just in America, but for
We'll
it to
start with
work.
America, really, because,
But
you
do you
know,
see the problem that interest is being paid internationally? So do you need an international amnesty, like for people to just say, forget paying back money on interest internationally for it to work?
well, I think you need to target a particular country. So, because it's global hegemon, everybody will just follow in its wake, right?
But
And
America owns China. That's the problem. So should it forget paying it back, or
yes,
maybe it doesn't matter?
yes, because China can't do anything. It's not going to invade America.
Okay, that's interesting.
But
Nobody
then,
really wants to invade each other, maybe, is what you're saying.
yeah, because then they'll be really poor, and people will, want to pick up the pieces, and they'll be too busy to think of war.
It
But
is true that China needs America to buy stuff from it. It is a closed circle in many ways. So there's no point really killing or destroying America, because then they won't have any customers. Is that kind of what you're saying, maybe? That's why they
well,
don't.
I mean, the Chinese are also quite wealthy. I mean, they do have quite, they do have a middle class now.
And they don't really need the money, is that what you're
Well,
saying?
well, I don't know about not needing the money, but I mean, they seem to be the ones with the money.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Okay, cool. So there's practical solutions to getting rid of usury. Um, where is this one? Is there anything? Let's put it on the screen. Who is Lady? There seems any Pakistani. Okay. Are you Pakistani? I am originally Pakistani, born in England, currently in the Middle East, Jordan. And the lady is Malaysian, brought up in England, probably.
Yes, yes. Came to school.
Cool. Yeah, Claire Core. There you go. The secular Koranist YouTuber, and you'll find out more. Anyway, so next question is there anything that is negatively affecting society more than usury? Is usury the big problem, or are there bigger problems?
Um, are you thinking of things like gay marriage and
Yeah.
transgenderism?
Is that more dangerous than usury at the moment?
Well, I mean, it's like all these problems, all these issues that have been identified as problems would be solved by Sharia, banning or, um, you know, banning things that shouldn't be done and encouraging things that should be done. And, yeah.
So it's kind of silly question in a way. They're all bad. They all need to be dealt with. Is that what you're
In
basically
one fell
saying?
swoop, in a package. Because if you sort of we'll deal with this usury thing, 1 year, and we'll deal with the, marriage and family issues thing, and
And they're
it
related,
should be
aren't
done
they?
in one fell swoop, or at least you can just conceive of it as what a complete problem that can be completely solved by.
Yeah, they are all related. Like, for example, it's women mostly who are in debt. They have more debt than men do on average, even though they earn less. and why. So if you fixed family values where women were told they should listen to the husband, they're probably going to be less in debt and less dependent on this usury system. So yeah, they're probably related. I don't know if you can. Islam didn't enforce itself on people in one fell swoop, but I think just getting moving in the right direction, things will start getting better. Is the That's my idea of how things will improve. But anyway, yeah. So kind of a silly question. Is anything more worse than usually? There is lots of bad stuff. Like humanity is currently dying out because people are not having enough children, and it's not because, would you agree, they don't have enough money? Although if that affects things, because it's usually poorer people who have the most kids anyway. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I really think the whole point of religion is to frighten people into marrying and being responsible married parents. I mean, that ultimately is what all the religions do, except that,
Hmm.
you know, Judaism is particularly strict and Islam is, you know, not as strict, but is known for its rules, which everybody hates because they hate rules.
Hmm.
That I think is a problem with Islam, because, you know, everybody thinks, oh, I knew that, I don't have to be told by anybody about this, that, or the other, you know. And you know, why shouldn't I eat pork? Why, you know, all these things that kind of immediately irritate the, you know, the person who
The
isn't
Western
already Muslim.
mindset
And
of
well, it's not just Western. I mean, you know, there are lots of um, Islamophobes in China,
oh really?
and I think the instinctive um, antipathy is because it's like all these rules. We have to follow all these rules, you know,
Hmm.
and that's what, you know,
Don't
immediately
don't Chinese people
antagonizes
follow
them.
rules?
Pardon?
Don't Chinese people, or I mean, maybe it's a silly question. I don't know, but I get that how Western people, because I'm used to Western people, they just kind of like, oh, I want to do anything I want, not realizing that you don't actually do anything you want already. Like you've got a government that tells you you can't walk around naked and stuff like that. So why not follow rules that actually benefit you? But I was just thinking, Chinese people, Japanese people, they love rules, don't they? Or maybe they don't.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
suppose that they want to think it's their own rules, and they don't want some
Mm.
foreign religion of, you know, some brown people. I mean, you know, immediately, you know, that there is a sort of instinctive, you know, racism. It's like, well, you know,
Mm.
we've always been taken over by white people, and brown people have always been taken over by white people. So, you know, who are these brown people telling us what to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, there is that instinctive racism. And I think the way to overcome that is to kind of really own those rules and say, these are my rules. I like those rules. These usually stuff is bad for me. I want to make it my rule. It's not really being imposed on me. It's good for me and I want to follow it. So that's what I would really want people to do, to kind of see the benefit in it and put those rules on themselves.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
mean, the
yeah.
point is easily made that, you know, that um, the West is the most powerful empire because it was a beneficiary of organized religion. And
Mm.
organized religion means, you know, scripture and laws and rules, which they used to follow until they decided not to follow it. And, you know, look what's become of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I'm sure their
basically,
ancestors would be ashamed of them.
yeah. So where even as a Muslim, I'm saying the British Empire was strong because it had Christianity. It had civil behavior that told them how to behave, to be married, and things like that. Um, and now they've lost that. Christianity become a minority religion in England, and that atheism has destroyed them. And like literally, they're killing themselves now because it's like, oh, what's the point of life? What's the point of doing anything? What's the point of getting married? What's the point of having kids? Like all these, what's the point? It's just destroying it in the UK. And they keep saying, let's bring back British values. Well, go on then, go back to church. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, we don't know what British values are, and I'm so glad
Christianity,
you
maybe?
mentioned that this, you know, idea of, you know, British values, because there was something called fundamental British values, if you remember, and being pushed through schools in 2015,
Yeah.
2010 to 2015.
Yeah. I can't
And
remember what those were. Staying in queues or something or what?
tolerance, respect for
Oh yeah,
others,
that's the one.
democracy, that kind of thing. It's sort of vague stuff that sounds
Hmm.
good, and they want to keep it deliberately vague so they can change the meaning of words. Like,
Hmm.
um, it's like Christianity. It has no codified principles, while it is Judaism and Islam that has these codified principles: 10 Commandments, 7 Noahide laws, 13 principles of
Hmm.
Judaism, 5 pillars of Islam. So people will feel they can list these things so they know what they are. But for Christians, it's like, is it okay to be gay or not? Do you forgive the adulterers or not? I mean, nobody really knows. It's like, whatever the government feels like at any given time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, some Christians will say, "Oh no, being gay is definitely against the Bible," but then those same Christians will say, we don't believe in following in any exact law. It's all in your heart. It's the Holy Spirit who will tell you what to do and stuff like that." So they have a lot of contradictions to deal with. And finally, are Jews controlling us? Coming back to the whole Jewish thing, I know you don't like it. I kind of don't like it in some ways, but the whole
I,
topic
I
was,
actually
are
quite
Jews
like
con-
it
You
because
quite like it? Go for it.
yeah, because I mean, ultimately, it's Christians and Muslims who are obsessed about Jews, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of unavoidable because
Mm-hmm.
both Christians and Muslims have to acknowledge that the Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. and
Mm-hmm.
the Christians say, oh, but God is also Jesus, and Muslims are saying, oh, revelation is the final one, and better than the Torah. So
Mm-hmm.
whether you like it or not, it all goes back to Jews. But the thing is, the only reason why Westerners always feel that Jews have got what, and now Muslims, is because, it, if you have a proper religion that you can define and be
Mm.
identified with, you have a stronger sense of identity and cohesion. I know Jews and Muslims say, oh, we're so divided, we can never agree about anything. But at least you can say, well, the Torah is our revelation and the Quran is our revelation, and
Mm.
we don't disagree about the actual words, even if we disagree about the interpretation. But if you go to the New Testament, it's written by, we don't even know exactly how many people wrote it. I
Mm.
looked up, I asked Grok, and it said 8 to 10 people were the
Mm.
authors of the New Testament. So of
Yes,
course
people
you would
shouldn't
expect,
think that the pen names are the real authors. So when it says John, it's not a John that really wrote it. We don't actually know who wrote John. It's just a chapter. It's just a section of the Bible somehow.
yeah, and all these characters, and they didn't live at the same, in the same time. They didn't even meet each other. Paul never met Jesus. He suspected, oh, well, he's only selling Christianity to the Gentiles because, he knows that if he tried to sell it to his own Jews, they would execute him for instigating them into practicing idolatry.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So are Jews controlling us because they're smarter than us? A lot of people realize that, well, there's a lot of studies to say that Jews are smarter. They have like 20% of, like, even though they're like 2% of the population or 0.2% of the population, they've got 20% of the Nobel Prize sorry, Nobel Prize prizes on scientific whatever parts of the Nobel Prize and stuff like that. Einstein was a Jew, and so many others were Jews. Um, and they seem to be a minority controlling or have a huge amount of control. They control Hollywood, they control banks. Don't know what else they control. They run pornography, even apparently. So they seem to be smarter than the average people. I actually don't have a problem with that. Um, because I would say black people are stronger than the average people. It's just every race has got different benefits. So could that be, or could it be that they are just using economics to control people? Because if you're smarter than most people, you would just naturally do it. Like, why wouldn't you use your intelligence to control people if it was that easy to do? Um,
Well, actually, I don't
yeah,
think that that's smart. I mean, they're basically um, tricked by the American government to go and live in Israel and fight and die for American imperial interests. I don't
that's
call that
true.
clever at all. And then,
Yeah.
of course, they get the blame for U.S. foreign policy because everybody's,
Mm,
happy to blame them for everything. Um, I think they're, just as much victims. I mean, we always think, oh, Jews are they're all so rich, but of course they're not all rich. Only a few
mm,
of them are, and they're
yeah.
just sort of known for their marriage and family values. But
Mm.
many of them no longer do what
Yeah, they've
they're
got
not
like
observant.
the most gays in the Middle East, right? Probably.
Yeah, because they've assimilated, they've become liberal, they've become Western,
Mm,
and the thing is, nobody. I think this is this is fundamentally a problem that even Muslims will face because even Muslims are losing their identity or
mm,
their connection with their religious principles because of course just like any other you know people claim to have a religion, they don't read their own scripture, so we don't
mm,
expect Christians to know their New Testament, and we can't expect every Muslim to read the Quran.
mm,
And then it's not just reading it's a matter of do you have a kind of agreement about how this or that verse is interpreted, and of course since it's just a theory in the minds of most Muslims living in the West, of course they're going to disagree, and then and then eventually just ignore it.
I think there is a lot of agreement, though, amongst Muslims for most things. Like interest is bad, drinking is bad. There's a lot more clarity amongst Muslims about their faith than Christians, definitely, and maybe Jews. I don't know. Actually, Jews. The
Well, there,
problem
there,
with
there are
Jews,
four
that
different kinds of
so.
Jews, according to Pew Research. You
What
know,
about Jews? Did you say?
yeah, yeah. So in Israel,
Mm,
there's the Haredim, who are the ultra orthodox, and then the
yeah.
Masortim, who are the traditional, I think, and then the Datiim, who are just sort of vaguely religious, and then finally the secular Jews, the Hilonim. So
Mm,
even in Israel, they're all divided into these groups, and of course they can never agree, and of course they can't agree because of the. I mean, if you look at how many general elections they had in Israel in the last 6 years, you'll find that they're being forced to vote, and then and then it doesn't do them any good either, because of these unstable coalitions um, and I think it's a conceit that Israel is a democracy when in fact it's just an American colony,
mm.
used to try out all the latest weaponry, the Iron Dome, and I mean I guess if you um, were an arms manufacturer, you'd like Israel because you know that they're the ones who try out your latest weaponry and your latest military tactics against whoever.
That's a fascinating perspective because we don't normally see Jews, the Zionist Jews, as victims because they're always perpetrating genocides and killing so many other people. But they are being used by, let's say, the Israeli government. Yeah, that's a fascinating. Yeah, and they're getting bombs thrown at them, and
And
yeah,
everybody hates them, and
yeah.
everybody blames them for US foreign policy, and it's all like, well,
I
of course
wouldn't
they're
say
going
they're
to.
innocent, but they
Oh
put
no,
themselves
no.
in that position, and they must be stupid in many ways to do that. I wouldn't want to go to. I mean, I'm living next to it, but I wouldn't want to go there. And things are getting quite expensive there as well. So Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're always complaining anyway, and I mean you probably don't listen to um the Jewish YouTubers, but a lot of them are kind of asking the same sort of questions like, who are we? What? Why are we doing this? It makes no
Mm,
sense. Are we being used? And they're full of conspiracy theories too. They're
mm,
saying things like, October 7 was our 9/11, and that there was like Hamas is being sponsored by the US government to keep them fighting, because that's the whole point. The narrative is that America is a good guy protecting all these helpless Jews from being attacked by everybody who hates them. But really,
mm.
it's a colony for Americans to project their power in the Middle East and keep an eye on the on the oil and control international shipping.
Well, there's a good argument for that, and they seem to be controlling Saudi and the Emirates and everything else. So there is evidence for that. All right, that's very interesting. Hopefully, people benefited from this discussion. I think the main takeaway. What's your main takeaway for this show? What do you want people to take away from this whole discussion, this 1 hour discussion?
Well, I think you see these narratives, whatever narrative, religious or political, they become sacred in our minds, and a lot of people have been, too used to saying, "Oh, the Jews control us." It's like, no, it's the American empire that controls everyone. And you can't even deny that, because America has been called the global hegemon, and everybody knows it has the most nuclear bombs and biggest navy and army and whatever. So and of course it controls the international banking system. So
Mm,
and to blame Jews is um I don't know, sort of blaming the toe of the giant or something, you know. And the thing is, people want to think of Jews as being super cunning and indestructible and
mm,
very sinister, and I think actually it's the American government that has very cleverly, psychologically, um, you know, made everybody hate Jews by forbidding criticism of Jews, or calling anyone who questions, Israel, a Nazi, and that's the best way of turning them into a Nazi and hating Jews. And um, I don't know if you remember the late Rabbi Sachs, and he said, well, we seem to be getting a lot of privilege, and it doesn't really help, over privileging the Jews. It'll only make them hate us more. And then
mm.
he went on about Cain and Abel. I can't find these references now. Maybe I just dreamt it or
But it's an
imagined it.
interesting perspective anyway, even if you can't get references. That the privilege is making them unpopular. Interesting. Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. So that's one way of answering the question: are Jews controlling us through usury? Not really. It's America. Some people might say, well, America's controlled by the Jews because the Jews control the banks that control America. But without going down that discussion again, because we've kind of just discussed it already, I would say, and I think you might agree, is that the best way, instead of pointing the finger, point the thumb. The problem really starts with you and ourselves, I should say. And if we fix ourselves, if we start following God's laws or Sharia law, which just means God's laws, which includes being nice to your mum and stuff like that,
Hmm.
um, then we won't be suffering from all the problems we're suffering from. We won't be victims of Jews and whatever. And yeah, and we've already given solutions as to how to overcome this system. So when we become moral people, when we follow God's laws, we won't have these problems. And we don't need to blame people. We should first blame ourselves for not following the laws. And the first step in allowing people to follow laws is that they should be aware of it. And that's the main takeaway from this show, that people should be aware of what used to be normal, what is taught by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and how dangerous it is. And if people can at least understand that, that's at least a step in the right direction. So,
Yes, and I just wanted to remind Muslims that you know it, may in a similar way there is this perception of Muslim privilege, and and that's probably because you manage to keep yourselves together, you have a distinct
yeah.
identity, you keep becoming mayors of important Western cities, so
London, New
of
York,
course they're
yeah,
going to
keep
get
going.
angry and scared.
Mm.
Right, but it's your religion and your identity that protects you and raises you in
Yeah, we have the
status.
privilege, but people are scared of saying anything against us because we will say something back and do something about it.
Yeah, and you have the arguments, and
Yeah.
that's a great thing. You basically
You
come
will
with
look
all the
stupid,
arguments.
yeah, if you argue against a Muslim, probably, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
that's quite powerful.
it's quite a nice feeling too, because Muslims can win the argument against Jews. You know,
Yeah.
I, I know you don't quite agree with me about chapter 17, verse 104, but it's sort of like, if Allah is
Which one
Zionist,
was that? Go on,
chapter
repeat.
17, verse 104 about Allah being Zionist. And I'm saying,
Oh,
if, let's just for a moment, to take it for granted that it is true, that then, why are these Jews having all these problems? It's because they don't live under God's laws in the
mm,
Holy Land. And that is
absolutely. I
why
agree in
that,
that much.
they can't enjoy, Israel, peacefully.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I agree that Muslims and Jews, and I think many Muslims and Jews and Christians, whatever, because they've all would agree that we can live in peace because we have lived in peace in Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it, because we've lived in peace for thousands of years, at least hundreds of years. Yeah, over 1,000 years. So yeah, thank you very much, Claire. I think we brought up lots of important topics, and hopefully some learned something useful from this whole discussion.
Yes,
Appreciate
I
it.
hope so. Thank you for your questions, and I hope I managed to answer them
I think you
clearly
did.
enough.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Okay.